Hello, and welcome to our weekly HudUniGames cast. Coming to you again once again from our home offices this week, but usually based at the University of Huddersfield. My name is Duke, and today we have an almost full house. I'm joined by Matt, Daryl, Mick, and Ash.
Hiya.
And today we're going to talk about games from the 90s. So last week we did late 70s and 80s, and today it's the 90s. So let's roll the intro. Ooh, I think I went around twice then. Did I accidentally roll our intro twice?
You
Never
did.
mind. Well, I think we'll cope, won't we? Let's go to the other shot and move the slides along. So, classic games from the 90s. Who wants to lead off?
I think to start with, it was a continuation of the late 80s. So for the first year or two, it was still like the home computers, like the Atari ST, Commodore Amiga, that kind of thing. And you had the home consoles like the NES and Sega Master System. So they were continuing on in early 90s. And then suddenly there was this thing, there was a handheld boom. And that was led by the Game Boy. So I don't know if you want to move some of the slides
Yeah, I
on.
could say for me though, it was it really. I'll move it on, but for me it was the PC, the 90s, because I didn't really join in the whole console thing in the 90s or early 90s anyway. It was
Yeah, I mean, the PCs was throughout the 90s. But to start with, it was like just the CGA games, wasn't it? Like the four colour games.
yeah. There's a load coming up. There's a load coming up later on that led me into gaming because
And I think for most people, PCs were just too expensive at the time.
yes,
And the gameplay on them wasn't really that popular.
I was very lucky actually. My stepdad worked in PC, so he got me on that route. I'll talk about it when we get to actually about the GX 4000 that I actually asked for my 12th birthday and didn't get, but we'll get to that one as we go. So here's some handheld ones. Some famous
So you've
ones.
got the links up on the left, top left. You've got the Game Boy, and then is that a PC Engine?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, and the Game Gear, yeah.
I see.
I've never even heard of a PC Engine.
Well, I included it, but it's interesting because it was a really big seller. The Lynx was in the UK, but hardly sold anything.
Well, I mean, like I say, the first
Overall,
one out.
less than 500,000 units, whereas the PC Engine sold millions of units, but was never released in Europe.
Yeah,
Kind of
the
a
first one out of the
weird
box
one.
was the Game Boy, and I think the Game Boy officially came out in '89, but then in the UK came out in 1990. And that was the one that took
That's
off.
true. That's true. But the Lynx was released in '89 as well, the original Lynx, and was colour at the time, just far more expensive.
And the batteries lasted about 2 minutes.
Yeah, also that.
I remember playing on a Lynx, but I don't remember any games that I played.
I love Shining Force on that.
Blue Lightning.
I can't remember. I'm definitely. I mean,
Yeah, Blue Lightning was good as
the
well.
Game Boy was my one of choice.
And it looks very awkward to hold.
Which one? The Lynx.
The Lynx.
Yeah, like the button's been down and then at the top.
I don't remember it.
It's kind
Well,
of you kind of moved your thumb up and down.
I think the idea was that you was meant to be able to rotate it
Yeah, I'm
around
gonna say,
or hold it either
Wasn't
way.
it left-handed, right-handed? You
Yeah.
just switched it over.
But yeah, it was massive.
Hmm.
So that one there is the original one on that picture, but then they came out with a Mark II that was probably about 2/3 the size.
See, I think unlike some of you guys, the 90s is my era of getting into gaming, as opposed to you guys that have already established on the Atari and the PC Engine and things like that. So when you say consoles like the Game Boy, these are what I think of.
Yeah.
The Game Gear with Sonic and the Game Boy with Tetris, and as soon as you mention the original Game Boy, you've got to mention Pokemon.
Well, I mean,
So-
the original Game Boy was by far the most technically inferior of any of those consoles. But it just took off and it sold the most.
because it was so cheap.
The
Yeah,
screen on it
price
was
point was
awful.
right.
It's cheap, it's pocketable, it had the catalogue of games that went along with it. With your, all you have to do is go through the back catalogue, and you've got things like Kirby and Donkey Kong and Pokemon, and you even go on to more obscure ones, which are actually really awesome, like Darkwing Duck.
Was Pokemon Red original Game Boy?
Yeah, Red and Blue were original.
See, I had Pokemon Red, but I never had an original Game Boy. My dad had it with just the one game being Tetris, and I was never allowed to touch it. But I remember playing Pokemon Red.
You might have had Fire. You might have had Fire Red, which was the remake for the GBA.
I don't know, because there's still the Missigno Pokemon on there, which I'll get onto later. But interesting.
Interesting what Mick just said there about being the technically most inferior. If you think about the Nintendo Wii, the Switch, and so on, they're always behind the curve.
It's always been Nintendo's strategy.
Yeah, but they make games that are so playable that you don't care what graphics chip it's got in it. Yeah. That's not part. It's not even a part of your equation, is it? When you're playing,
it's always been Nintendo's strategy to always make a profit on every single console and cartridge that they put out. Whereas other manufacturers often make a loss on the actual machine, and then make the money back from cartridges or discs or whatever it is. And that. It's always been Nintendo's.
Wasn't the 360 the most famous for that? The Xbox 360, I mean, for how much it lost in actual hardware. If I remember.
I think they lost a lot more because of the Red Ring of Death, but that's a different story.
I think crucially to all that story, we're going to discuss it later, obviously, but Atari made a lot of mistakes in the 90s, and that's why they're no longer the original Atari is no longer in hardware. Yeah.
I think the Game Boy is really interesting. The fact that you said it is the least powerful bit of hardware, but it's also got the worst screen to the point where they sold add-ons.
Yeah.
So you can actually see the damn thing.
Yeah, that's mad.
But the Game Boy Advance wasn't even any better screen-wise. No backlighting originally, was it? And things like this. It's like they just didn't bother improving the screen.
Yeah, the original Game Boy Advance had no backlight either. That was all.
That came later.
Actually, weirdly looking at it, it's tiny.
Yeah. I've got one of them.
You forget.
I think mine's blue next door.
Well, I mean, it ended up going through 5 or 6 different versions. Did the Game Boy? So you ended up with
there was the Advance,
like the Color, and then you end up going on to the Advance, and the Advance was basically a Super Nintendo in a handheld console.
Wasn't the Advance SP as well? Yeah. Later.
And then eventually evolved into the Nintendo DS, and that lineup.
Anyway,
kind of
let's move on from handhelds. Oh, there we go. The actual Game Boy. Random Game Boy games in 10 minutes.
So the original one was basically 4 color, basically 4 shades of grey.
But I do look how they show it as black and white, but it was never black and white. It was
it was more of that yellowy green thing.
It's yellow green color, and I think that's what when nostalgia kicks in, you remember those colors being green, and so when you see a video showing black and white, you're like, well, that's not what the Game Boy looked like.
Yeah, I like the green tint to it.
I wonder if anybody made a replacement screen like in recent times that was actually just black and white.
You can do. You can get replacements for them. Yeah.
There's loads of modders as well, giving it like a backlight and a nice, cleaner black and white image.
Yeah, I've seen the backlights. I've not googled a black and white screen. That'd be quite cool. Onwards then. So there's the Lynx and the Game Gear. Does your Game Gear still work?
The Game Gear was hilarious because the batteries lasted literally about 30 minutes. So you'd put 6 in.
6?
And then it literally lasted about... You were lucky if you got 40 minutes out of it.
Wow.
I'm sure the Lynx was worse.
Oh, yeah, Lynx was terrible. And as I said before, I mean, the Game Gear sold 11 million units, and the Atari Lynx sold 450,000. It was like absolutely nothing. I'm amazed that Atari kept going after release the Lynx.
How many Game Boys did they sell?
119 million.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's weird that Atari kept getting it wrong, because it'll come up later, the GX4000, that was Atari, wasn't it? And that was almost the worst selling console of all time. Or at least very low, 15,000 units they sold.
Wow.
Amstrad. It was Amstrad.
Amstrad was it? They made that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really
Maybe
really
you shouldn't have a games company that starts with A, at least hardware-wise. Some games that Mick worked on. Here you go, Mick.
Yeah, Game Boy was one of my peaks kind of thing. I did a lot of Game Boy stuff. So I think, have a look what we got here. So you've got humans up in the top left, then a game called the Fidgets up in the top right, and then Prophecy Viking Child down
Is
in
human-
the bottom.
Sorry, is humans
right
Dino
is the-
Dudes?
Yeah. On the Atari, it was on the Lynx. It was Dino Dudes. Yeah,
Love that. Love that game. Brilliant
Yeah.
game.
and then I don't know what that one is in the bottom right. That's going all corrupt by the looks of it.
It's supposed to be
Oh,
Super
Kickoff. Yeah. But yeah, so I did quite a few Game Boy games kind of thing on that. I mean, because they were quite simple, just the 4 colours kind of thing, that you ended up spending maybe 4 or 5 months working on one. And it tended to be a team of 2 people. So you'd have your programmer, your artist, and the programmer and artist would also do all the level design. And then you probably have a musician actually come in and do the music separately kind of thing on that. But yeah, teams back then, it was 2 people.
Bit of a difference.
I was reading earlier, actually. We're going to get onto this later, but you mention it now. I was really quite shocked to find out how few people worked on the Donkey Kong Country on the SNES. That was, at the time, one of the most graphically spectacular games ever created. It's only 12. A team, the entire team was 12 people.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, moving on. We got the best of Game Boy Color.
Oh yeah, I put that slide in because that was my first real console, I guess. See, although now, in fact, yeah, no, there's colours look on the screenshot I've got for Pokemon Red.
Oh yeah, because in the Game Boy Color, they could program in specific games to block out colors per region of the screen. So the original Game Boy Pokemon, if you plugged it into a Game Boy Color, it would fake the illusion that it was a color game.
So that's probably what happened with me then, because that was my first console, that color as well, which apparently now is quite a limited sort of color and it's well sought after. But yeah, I really enjoyed just playing it, taking it to school. Probably shouldn't have done that, but also the screen as well. I used to have to sort of kneel on the floor and put my head down flat on the floor just to block the light so I could see the screen. But I only really had a couple of games, and the first one was Pokemon, and then I got the best Zelda game, which is Oracle of Ages.
Whoa, I don't think so.
It's good. I just remember I didn't know what to do, and I was just playing it for about 3-4 hours until I figured out you just have to move into this sort of cube and it slides and unlocks the door. And since then, I just fell in love with it. It's a really good game.
Cool. And there's Zelda up there. Then, this is
And then
add-ons.
I put this in because they had some of the best sort of peripherals around, I think. So the screen Matt showed you earlier, I had one of those with like lights built in. Still a nightmare to see, like, if you're playing it in the back of your car and the street lamps have to light it up every so often at night. But the Game Genie was good.
I was just looking at that. So that's slotted into the cartridge slot on the top of it, yeah?
Yeah, so if you had one of those at school, you were like a god. Everyone came to you with their games. But you could put characters in, I guess, hexadecimal. And it checked cheats and saved them on the actual cartridge. So I remember being at school with one of these Game Gears and a massive poster with all the list of hex you could put in to cheat on Pokemon and whatnot. It was good.
I mean, I remember seeing one of those Game Genies that was the size of a cartridge that slotted in the top, but not one of those massive ones.
Yeah, there was a Game Shark, but that was more expensive, and my parents are cheap, so I got a Game Genie for Christmas.
Yeah. I think with any kid from the 90s, if they had a Game Boy, they either struggled with the magnifying glass or they'd have the Super Game Boy.
Super Game Boy.
Anyone remember the Super Game Boy?
I think I remember that one.
Is that the one that plugged into the Super Nintendo?
Yeah, so you could actually take your SNES, your Game Boy games, and you would slot them in, and then that would slot into your SNES, and then you could play your Game Boy games on the big screen.
Cool.
I've never even seen that.
But basically, it looks like modern day emulators where it would put a border around the outside as well, so it'd all look really nice and professional. But yeah, that was awesome. Playing Pokemon on the big screen.
Cool.
I like the printer you could get with it and the camera. So I got a camera for Christmas once, and the printer ran out of printer paper and never got any more. It was too expensive, apparently.
Was it not thermal?
I think so. I think it's just a receipt printer. Yeah, but my dad never got me another roll. So
time to get on eBay and relive your childhood, I think.
Found a friend in
Yeah.
Tesco's or something like that.
And then we're on to Mega Drive next.
Oh well, actually, that's not a Mega Drive.
No, that picture looks like a Genesis.
That is a picture of a Genesis.
It is. That's my fault because I couldn't find a transparent image for Mega Drive.
There you go, a live feed of
That's
one.
that's what a Mega Drive looks like.
See,
And then I do
mine
have
never looked like that.
I have a Mega Drive 2 somewhere, which was just basically a smaller shell version of it, with the buttons and the slider on the left replaced to the center. But yeah, that was the Mega Drive 2.
I wonder if I had a Mega Drive 2 then, because mine was just a small square with a big circle in the middle.
Yeah, that was the 2.
Ah. Yeah, I remember coming home from school once and my dad had bought it just because he wanted Pac-Man, and then he bought me a bunch of games for it as well.
I do love how it's called the Mega Drive 2, and yet it was the exact same hardware inside, just in a smaller shell. So nowadays it'd just be called like the PlayStation 4 Slim.
Yeah, we called it Slim, wouldn't it? I never had a Mega Drive. I think because I was just PC gaming, so I never
Well, the two images on the screen at the bottom are the sort of like the things that I wasted most time on the Mega Drive.
Oh, Cool Spot.
Cool Spot's just so good.
Yeah, we had that too.
Cool Spot looks like an M&M.
Duke had never heard of it until
Wasn't he
yesterday.
the mascot for Sprite for quite a long
7
time
Up.
as well?
7
Up. That was it. Yeah.
Looks like an M&M.
He's the dot on the 7-Up logo, I think.
He is.
Wow. Cool.
No, there was some really awesome games on the Mega Drive that you couldn't get anywhere else.
A lot of Disney stuff was very, very good as well.
I put a slide in later with a few Disney bits.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's very, very solid artwork in those in
Some
particular.
more Mega Drive stuff.
Ah, yeah, there's the Disney stuff.
Oh,
See, I
Lion
played
King.
the Lion King on the SNES.
yeah, I played Lion King SNES.
But I know Aladdin. The version on the SNES and the version on the Mega Drive were made by two different companies.
Yeah.
And apparently the Mega Drive was a lot better than the SNES version.
That's the version I had.
But yeah, these were the only 3 games we owned. So my dad bought it just because he wanted to play Miss Pac-Man. And then he got me those Toy Story, Lion King, and Streets of Rage. And I could never finish Toy Story. Managed Lion King after about a year and a half. Streets of Rage is just a classic.
I was going to say Toy Story is really hard. I played it about a year ago, and yeah, it's surprising. Not difficult. Not really hard. That's the wrong way. Surprisingly hard. It would be more accurate.
I never really got into Mega Drive. Even now, when I'm playing emulators and stuff like that kind of stuff, Mega Drive games, I don't know. There's something about them.
They were very 90s.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love SNES games. Same
I
period kind of thing, but there's just I don't know what it is about Mega Drive.
I think Sega went through that period of trying to advertise themselves as more edgy than Nintendo.
Yeah.
So they sort of pushed a lot of games that were like teenage adult sort of like Altered Beast and Mortal Kombat and things like that. Which you
tell you, one of the things that stuck in my head from the Mega Drive that was really incredibly difficult was Echo the Dolphin. Did anyone else play that?
Oh, Echo was impossible to beat.
That was hard. I've only played that.
I remember it.
See, I bet a lot of people, students and stuff, don't know nowadays is that when you played the game, if you didn't finish it in one sitting, you basically had to start again.
Yeah.
And passwords were far too long to write down.
So Echo is like trying to complete that in one sitting was almost impossible.
Yeah, absolutely awful. I remember the elation that I felt once I finished Sonic the Hedgehog, and then just thought, well, yeah, I've done it, but there's no way I can show anyone else that I've done it. Everyone's going to have to take my word for it. It's just a weird thing. No achievements or anything like that. Don't have a camera to hand. It's just odd.
But yeah, like Ash said, most of the actual cartridge games didn't have a save state feature. So a lot of the time you had to literally write down a code that it gave you. And then you had to input that code again when you started again.
I know there was a cheat in Sonic 2 where you go into the sound menu and change the sounds to a certain value and you unlock everything. And my sort of stepbrother knew it and never told me.
Oh.
But there's no internet back then. I remember getting dial-up and my dad was like, right, we'll get you some cheats for your Game Boy game, but you've got to be super quick.
Yeah, because it's just cost us a tenner to get those.
Yeah.
Okay, so SNES is next.
Yeah, so they like I say when you were talking about Mega Drive, yeah, this is mine. This is the SNES. I absolutely love the SNES. It's still one of my favorite consoles.
The SNES for me was my very first console that I owned. So everything before this, like your Sega Master System. Actually, we kind of skipped the Master System. Or was that the 80s? No.
It's 80s.
Oh, well, see, my neighbours had the Master System, so I used to go play that, and then my uncle used to have the NES, so I used to play that. But this was the first console I actually got bought on Christmas.
I just love the aesthetics of it and that as well, the design of it.
In my opinion,
thing.
In my opinion, it's still got one of the best controllers.
Yes, controllers definitely win.
Like,
do you remember what year you got it, Matt? Because it was expensive. You were very lucky if you got that early on.
See, for my story is that my parents were actually out of work at the time, when my dad was. And so this was bought to me by my great-granddad. Do
you know what year, though, roughly? How old would you have been? So I'm just trying to work out. 'Cause I did some calculations.
I'll have been about 5. So 90... When did it come out?
It came out in 90. It came out in 90 in the UK.
Yeah,
88. Oh, sorry, no, 90 in Japan, 91 in the UK.
It will either been 91 or 92.
No,
I got
are you
it.
sure
So
about
it'll have been when it just came out.
Yeah, and the thing is, I did the calculation earlier. £375 that would have cost in today's money.
Wow.
I think you're a bit off on your dates, though.
You want to double check? Because
I'm pretty sure it came out in UK in 95.
So it's 91.
No, it can't be 95 because I got it when I was.
Or am I thinking
that would have been concurrent with the PlayStation.
No, I'm thinking of the 64. It's going to be the Nintendo 64 that came out in 95.
91.
Because I was going to say it was before I moved back up north.
Yeah.
You were talking about the controller there, Matt. Isn't the
so it's my memory that's wrong then.
I would agree on the controller. In fact, isn't the 8-bit Do controller modelled on the SNES controller?
Oh yeah.
So,
I weirdly have one of those.
Yeah, mine's downstairs for the Switch.
But yeah, looking at Street Fighter now on there, absolutely legendary game. It was one of the first arcade conversions that actually matched the arcade. The Super Nintendo version of Street Fighter 2 was amazing.
You had some amazing games on the SNES. Like Daryl said before, Donkey Kong Country, incredible,
yeah.
Like the music on that is just amazing. Never mind the artwork. You've got the start of Metroidvanias with like your proper Super Metroid.
Well, there are more slides. Duke, do you want to move on the slides?
Yeah, sorry.
We've got several more slides with, and I think Donkey Kong's on possibly this slide.
I've never played it. Never had one. Never knew anyone who had one.
I'm not a platform gaming fan, but Donkey Kong Country was actually pretty damn playable.
Oh, Mario Kart as well was that's probably.
Well, these are the three that I spent most time playing on the SNES. That's why I put them on this slide.
Link to the Past, Mario Kart, Donkey Kong.
Game Boy Advance. Was it the exact same game?
Yeah, Link to the Past.
It will have been,
yeah.
Weirdly, I was playing Donkey Kong Country last night on an emulator, not on a real SNES.
But then, actually, there's one that you've missed on here, I think, which is Super Mario World.
Wait,
you've got it on the next.
No, we've got it. It's like I said, they were the ones that I played. I've always had a thing. I'm not a big fan of Mario platformy games. It's just something I'm not into. And I'm unusual in that respect. But there we go.
I think this one was sold with the actual machine. So obviously sold a lot of units because of it being packaged in with the machine and that. But yeah, beautiful game. Gameplay just really simple and that, yeah.
Cool. Okay.
I think just Super Mario World was that perfect moment of taking the formula that was Mario 3 on the NES. So Mario 3 is like arguably the best NES game. And then going, well, how do we one-up it with this jump from 16-bit to 32-bit? And I don't think you could get better than Super Mario World. Just for me, I played that game so much, just trying to get to the end and beat Bowser, and then realizing that, oh my god, there's an entire sub-world and star world that you can go through, and then understanding all of the different mechanics, how the flight works. That was one of the games that basically went, yeah, you want to get into gaming, this is how you do it.
Cool. Okay, let's move on. Street Fighter 2. Oh, you mentioned it already.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it, look at the graphics on it and everything. It was arcade standard graphics on a console, and just the gameplay on it is beautiful. And that spent hours and hours and hours playing on this before going to the pub. That was mates and that, and then go and play on arcade machine in the pub as well. It is just.
Yeah, I used to do the same thing with Mortal Kombat. Play it on my Mega Drive, and then go down the pub, and there was always one in the pub, my local pub at the time.
Cool.
Never
think
been
that-
into fighters.
See, that's I think something that your generation has over ours is that you got to go to the pub and play on arcade machines. Like that doesn't exist anymore. And by the time I was old,
Currently, pubs don't exist, Matt.
well, yeah, but like even when I was like, by the time I was old enough to go drinking, is that you never saw an arcade machine unless you went to Blackpool.
I put a lot of money into Blackpool arcade machines over the years. Far too much.
Yeah, so Street Fighter 2 was one of the first hardcore button mashers where you was just hammering all the different buttons and then trying to get your combos going and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just really good gameplay.
I've got to admit, I mean, it's probably coming up on a later
And then-
slide.
oh,
but
then
as far as
Pilot
fighting
Wings.
games are concerned, as far as fighting games are concerned, it's always been Tekken all the way for me. As soon as
This
Tekken
is-
came out, I was blown away by it.
So Pilot Wings on the Super Nintendo, this is one of my all-time favourite games. I think it is my favourite game on the SNES. And I mean, we're not seeing any video of it as such, but it was just really relaxing. The music and everything on it was just really relaxing. It was just really slow-paced, and it was just really chilled out.
Sounds rubbish.
No, it was good.
Says the man playing Animal Crossing right now.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, it was
Captain
good. It
Walking
was just-
Simulator.
Yeah, so you just had to do things like land a plane, pilot a glider through these circles in the air, and then you had little things like little jetpacks where you had to land on platforms and that. And it's all really simple, but it was just really, really relaxing and pleasant.
Cool.
And at the time, like you say, you got stuff like Mortal Kombat and that kind of stuff, and it was a different kind of thing. Oh, and then this Speedy Gonzales, this is a game that I worked on Super Nintendo. So basically, we were contracted to make a Speedy Gonzales, which is one of the Looney Tunes characters, game for him on the SNES and that. And the publisher decided, well, he's fast at running, all that kind of stuff. Sonic was big at the time. So let's try and make him a bit Sonic-y. And then the funny thing is, the game sold okay. I think it was only ever released in America. But then someone actually hacked it and put Sonic sprites and then released it as Sonic on the SNES. And that became quite famous as being like Sonic on the SNES kind of thing and that. So the game as it is that we did okay kind of thing, but yeah, became more famous as being hacked and being the Sonic game on SNES. So if anyone wants to look that up at any point, you'll see.
See if you can find a
I can
rollout.
see the resemblance.
Yeah.
Well, the gameplay, the idea of it was very similar to Sonic. So it was, try getting running quite fast down slopes and then through tubes and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was pretty much ripped off.
What is he
Sonic.
collecting there? I can't quite make it out. Is it
Little
cheese?
cheeses.
Cheese. Yeah, big cheese.
So it's like coins, but cheeses, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Little baby cheeses.
Bit cheesy.
Oh, there's these sprites.
And there's other
And then-
sprites.
yeah, these are some of the sprites for it and that.
These
yeah.
are the sprites you made, or is
Sprite
it from a...
Yeah.
How many people worked on this one?
There was about 4.
Wow.
So there was one coder, then I was lead artist on it, and then when I was in the UK, because we actually did half of it in the UK, the company went into financial difficulty, and then Sunsoft flew me and the programmer over to finish off in America. So when we was in the UK, I had an assistant artist for a bit, and then when we went to America, I had a part-time assistant artist as well there. But probably 80% of the game graphics I did, and then again, myself and the programmer and the assistant in America, we did all the levels between us, all the level design and that.
Wow. Different time.
So they were all done in D-Paint on the Amiga. So that was what we used for developing art on the SNES at the time.
So you were still using the Amiga back then?
Yeah.
Wow. That's quite cool.
Do you know what year it was? I mean, in the 90s.
It's early 90s. 1992, 93 probably.
Cool. Okay. Daryl's favourite console.
Yeah. Had to turn up eventually, didn't it? And Daryl's. We actually mentioned this in depth last week, but we can actually see it in action now. Tempest 2000 is just such a great game. It's a shame. I was quite surprised when I found out how few units the Jaguar had sold, but and I didn't buy it at the price point it was at. It was ridiculous money. I think adjusted nowadays, it was probably around £600 when it came out. Absolutely stupid money for a console of its time.
Buy an actual Jaguar for that.
Yeah, but then of course, this is what caused Atari to go bust. And at that point, they were kind of giving them away free with cornflakes. I think the first Jaguar I bought cost me £50 with a game, and then picking up second-hand games for it was cheap as chips. You just go to the market stores and pick them up for about £5. So yeah, but once I picked up the Tempest 2000, that was it. Absolutely blown away by it. It just was the most mesmerizing game of its time. It's really trippy. That's the sort of bonus level that's on there.
Yeah, I don't remember that part.
It is. I
do remember the awesome
absolutely
music.
Wonderful.
Really
Yeah,
great
and sort of the digitized sort of speech effects as well. It's just wonderful. Definitely, I think I've bought pretty much every Tempest game that's ever been released, and this is still my favourite by a long way.
It had quite a good Alien versus Predator game on it. From
it did, yeah. And Doom. It was the first console to have Doom on it as well.
I don't believe you just mentioned Alien vs Predator. I was trying to work out literally 2 days ago how to install Alien vs Predator on my PC. Now I don't have a CD drive because I found the disc and I was like, I really want to play this, but the only way I could think about doing it was pirating it.
Or you jump on eBay and buy a USB CD-ROM drive.
Well, if you've got the disc, you can download it, surely.
I'll tell you what, Matt, after Corona's over, you can borrow a USB CD drive.
Just so I can play Alien vs.
Just
Predator.
for that, yeah. That's it. I have one because I had the same problem about a year ago. I was like, how do I get stuff off a CD these days? It's a bit retro, that.
You just made me look at my PC and I go, oh my God, it hasn't got one.
Okay.
I've got a laptop, so kicking around somewhere.
Let's move on to one of the biggest, Wipeout. So I loved Wipeout. I had it on PC, weirdly. Wipeout 2097.
Can I just start with this, because this was my return really to gaming on a regular basis. I think through the sort of like late part of the 80s and early part of the 90s, I was more frequently out than in. But once this came out, that was it. I was staying in just to play video games. I had one pre-ordered from the Sony shop, and it cost me an arm and a leg to pre-order it with 2 controllers and 4 games. I've never actually done a calculation, but I'm going to guess about £800 in today's money. Absolutely silly money, but absolutely worth it.
Well, they did that.
Totally mind blowing when it first came out.
They did that. Was it the PlayStation 3 that launched at about £550, I think?
It was more than that, I think.
$599. Famously for saying $599.
Yeah, I remember. I went up.
Can play Ridge Racing.
I went up and bought a off-the-shelf in game. Not game. I think it was game, but yeah, I bought a PS3 and that was $5. I thought I paid $550, but anyway.
Well, it's always that thing of advancing that to today's money and saying, well, inflation would mean it's this amount of money. You just go, oh my God, did I really spend that much?
What's the PS5 launching at? Do we know?
No, they haven't announced it. Price. No one's announced price yet.
Controller. I think did Ash share that yesterday?
Yeah, new controller. Yeah.
Oh, the new one.
Yeah.
Have you seen the mock-ups of it in black instead? I think it looks so much nicer in black.
Oh, I like the Stormtrooper version personally.
So for most game players, the PlayStation was their first introduction to real 3D.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. All that stuff on the Jag was pseudo 3D.
Yeah.
I mean, Jaggy wasn't even. He had 64-bit written on it because it had 2 32-bit chips in it.
But it makes perfect sense.
What was it? No, actually, it might have been 4 16-bit chips. That was it. It had 4 16-bit chips in it, so they wrote 64-bit on it. Like that meant something.
Yeah.
It's like 4K, I guess.
I think that the PlayStation in its time was absolutely amazing, but I can't actually remember when I got mine because it won't have been at launch, but it'll have been a few years after.
I had mine.
So I remember trading in all sorts trying to get one.
Yeah.
But how many of you have been back and played PlayStation recently?
Me? I played
can't.
Wipeout.
Oh, you can't.
No, what I mean is, it's really hard work, is what I'm saying. It's because you look at the graphics and they're all sort of they're all distorted and weird, and it makes your eyes go boggy, and you go, how did I love this so much?
I bought one of the little mini PlayStation Classics.
Oh dear!
And I was like, yes, gonna relive my youth, play these games. Wow, they do not hold up well.
There's a very good reason they've been remastered, Matt.
There's a handful of games that do, like your Metal Gear Solid. Still holds up. Yeah, it's still good. Your Final Fantasy games still hold up, but
this one holds up better.
I don't think the mini is the best way of playing them, though.
It is.
It actually got slated for.
It did, but they're very easy to mod to put a much better emulator on, which I did, which makes it a lot more accurate to the original. But yeah, there's a handful of games that really do hold up well, but a lot of them don't. I remember, I played Cool Borders is on it, and I remember thinking, I remember playing this loads as a kid, got it up, it's almost unplayable.
It'd be interesting just to watch what's going on at the bottom, actually, because that's Tekken 1, and once it goes through the sort of like lovely rolling intro sequence, and it gets into the game graphics are really schlong.
There are no game graphics on this one. It's just.
Oh, did I not include them? Yeah, they are really bad though. And then, of course, on the later slide, I've included Tekken 3.
Should we move on?
Which was a major
Oh, you go.
upgrade.
Tekken 3.
As I said, Tekken's really my fighting game of choice, and always has been. I do love fighting games.
I've only ever played Yoshimitsu in that game since version 1, I think. That's all I'm just Yoshimitsu all the time, every version.
That's just wrong. You need to master every single character.
I just found him, liked him, stayed with him. That was it. Never bothered.
Weird.
Yeah, I think we got one quite late because we got Metal Gear with it and a couple of others. But a really good console. In fact, Metal Gear was the reason we bought the second one, the PS2.
Can you skip into these videos? Sorry, you're playing from.
Well, there's Metal Gear Solid on the top right. Again, like I said, it still holds up. It's still really good.
I never could get into Metal Gear Solid. It was just too slow, too much talking.
I never enjoyed them.
The moment you're told to plug your controller into the other
so this screen
that was mind blowing. That was just making. I was going, oh my god!
Oh no, I remember the bit where it says, "Look on the back of the box," and you're like,
oh yeah, that as well.
What do you mean, look on the back of the box? It's like look on the back, and there's a code there that you then put in, and it's like, it was
the RM.
Kind of breaking the fourth wall, I suppose. A bit Deadpool, but cool nonetheless. But yeah, Tekken 3, just absolutely mind-blowing that was on the same console.
And then you've got your Final Fantasy VII, which obviously is famous for starting off on a Nintendo console. It was originally supposed to be on the famous PlayStation Nintendo crossover console, but then got moved over to the PlayStation.
See, I could never do it, but I borrowed Final Fantasy VIII off my grandma, and then mysteriously came down with an illness, so I just stayed home playing it instead of going to school. And I think it just made me fall in love. Yeah,
borrowed it from your grandma. I like that.
Seven's the only Final Fantasy I've ever finished. The only one I've got to the end of.
I'm replaying the remake right now. It's really good. Some bits are quite familiar, but I think I've got further than what I got on the original.
Okay, moving on to some more.
Chocobo Racing's about the only thing I probably remember from it.
Oh, yeah, Formula 1.
Oh, I think, these are some of my favourite ones. So you've got Parappa the Rapper up in top. Really good music rhythm game.
I only ever had that on a demo disc.
What's the bottom left one?
Bottom left, Nightmare Creatures.
Oh, I remember that. That was one I rented from Blockbuster.
Oh yeah, Blockbuster.
not the TV show.
Actually. And then Formula 197 in the bottom as well. Really good racing game.
Who made
back when I was actually interested in Formula 1.
You've got to move on, Duke. There's some really good ones on the next slide, on the one after it.
Crash Bandicoot. God, I lived.
Yeah, this is the slide I put together. These are the games we had. Oddworld, Casper. Me and my dad used to sit and play that. And then Tomb Raider, me and my mum would play that. So it was quite good.
I was reading the chat and someone's put, show the Arthur racing game. I'm afraid, people, and I know I did work on it, that is in the 2000s and not in the 1990s.
I've been playing through the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy on the Switch, and it's still as great as it was. And I just got it on Steam as well because it was in one of the Humble bundles at some point.
There's a really good video on YouTube called Hacking the PlayStation, and it's the guy who made Crash and how they had to sort of hack the architecture to make it work, just to make it really stand out as a game and why it did so well.
Isn't there some of the designers watch a speedrun of Crash as well, don't they? And talk you through about all the shortcuts, and it's quite interesting.
Yeah, when devs watch speedrunners, it's good.
Okay, let's onwards. So we've got some more games that Mick worked on. You've been around forever, haven't you, Mick?
Oh, yeah.
Mate, do you work on the Harry Potter games?
Yeah, well, the first two on PlayStation, on original PlayStation.
Wow, they're famous for having a meme for the Harry Potter ones.
What, the Hagrid ones?
The Hagrid ones, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a few of them, yeah. But,
Did you Did you make Hagrid?
I worked with the character animators that did so. It was like I think there was 3 people worked on it, so it went from person to person kind of thing, and that and evolved.
So you can famously say now that you are responsible for the Hagrid meme.
Not really, but
yeah, you made the asset.
I was. I'll give you another thing though. My nickname at Argonaut was Mickrid. When we were working on them at the time, I was a much bigger chap, and I had a big, massive beard, and so they actually nicknamed me Mickrid.
And then Croc 2, you worked on Croc 2 as well.
Yeah, I did Croc and Croc 2.
Croc was one of my favourite games.
See, this is weird, because Croc was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely didn't pirate it.
So by this time, so just looking at these here, the first one on the left is Jonah Lomu Rugby. And so that was, I think, 2 years into PlayStation's life kind of thing, or whatever. So that was the first one that I did. And it's done as basically 2D sprites in a 3D world. And you can't really tell, but we actually did motion capture. For all the player movements. Yeah, we did motion capture, and then the actual character sprites were then built up out of about 20 different layers to get all the different strips and air color and skin color and all that kind of stuff. And it ended up being quite a big job to do because at the time, computers weren't as good at rendering and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so that was that one. And then the Croc games, I mean, by this time as well, yeah, so development tools-wise, all these games now are using Photoshop and very early version of 3ds Max. So by the time we moved on to PlayStation, we moved to Photoshop and 3ds Max, and they pretty much became the industry standard then.
Yeah.
Just looking at Croc there and trying to pick up them diamonds looks frustrating.
Mm-hmm. Which version of Max would you have been using at this time?
I think it was just called 3ds Max. I don't think there was a version.
So that'll be the DOS version then?
No, that was called 3D Studio
it was
R4.
2. I think it was. I think
I'm pretty sure
at the time this was released, it was surely it would have been Max 1 or Max 2.
Max 1 was 96-ish, 95, 96.
I remember using DOS version.
Yeah, when it was blue.
Really?
It was all blue, wasn't it? And it all named wireframe until you hit render. That's the one I used back in mid-90s. But then, Max was like 96-ish.
And then the other thing is...
So I'm just thinking, because those early versions of Max, they don't have gizmos or anything like that, do they, for movement and rotation?
Gizmo didn't come until about Max 4 or 5.
Yeah, so because I remember a few years ago looking back and downloading an old version and trying to use it, and they're almost impossible nowadays to use.
Well, the animation team for the Croc games and the Harry Potter games, well, not so much on the Harry Potter games, but the very first Croc, we were using silicon graphics machines.
Oh, expensive.
They were.
Well, that's what
so
Donkey
we had a
Kong
couple
was
of,
produced on as well.
I think there's 2 or 3 Indigos in the office.
Wow.
And like you say, they were like 20 grand, 30 grand machines at the time, or whatever.
Amazing those. Okay.
Which again, you got to
they're used.
calculate with inflation. You're probably talking sort of 40k there. It's mad.
Well, something I forgot to put on the thing. I was going to put on some dev kits to show you some dev kits from different things. So I've got some images of like the Game Boy dev kit, SNES dev kit, PlayStation dev kits, that kind of stuff.
Well, we'll do it for next week because we're doing this again next week, aren't we?
Yeah.
Let's try and get them.
And it's just it's interesting to see how big some of the dev kits were at the time, and the price of them was extortionate.
Oh yeah, they were hundreds and hundreds of thousands of pounds, weren't they, for the dev kits?
Okay.
So yes, I mean these days, where you've got Unity and you can just connect it up to most things. I mean, I've got a dev kit here for a Nintendo 3DS, and it literally is a Nintendo 3DS, but it's a developer version one.
Well, yeah, we've got a lot of dev kits for the Xbox 360 in the studio, and literally the only difference is you get a bigger hard drive attachment.
Yeah,
that's it.
And the
whereas back in the day, it used to be an absolutely massive box that used to connect up with cables, kind of thing, and that.
when our PS
and you'd still have your PC and all that kind of stuff, but you'd have this other box on there as well.
when our PS2 dev kits, they were basically just running Linux, I think, weren't they? We've got.
Yeah, we've got some of those in the studio as well.
I moved us on to N64 because I've noticed the time we're
we asked that
rattling on.
time,
So jumped to N64 now.
I couldn't find my 64. The only thing I could find was the controller for it.
Mine got stolen. The one in the office is actually a replacement.
Which I have to say is still one of the weirdest controllers because you don't touch the. You either do D-pad or you do analog. You don't do both. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Like never had one, but I went round to my uncle's and he was playing GoldenEye, and it looked quite interesting.
Yeah, wasn't the Nintendo 64 the first to introduce the analog controller and the actual trigger button as well?
Yeah. So that was for the likes of GoldenEye, which was incredible, and then you've got Mario for your analog stick for your 3D movement. I think N64 is probably the better of the early 3D consoles when you compare like your PlayStation to your N64. Your N64 does have that sort of that feel of they thought it through more than PlayStation did.
Yeah, I think it had the better technical like GPU in it, kind of thing on that. So you're not getting as much tearing or warping of textures. That kind of stuff.
You also get nice anti-aliasing on the N64 as well.
But it had a lot less memory, which is why you see much larger. I mean, the textures are stretched out a lot more, kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a nice comparison of Resident Evil 2 port for the compared to the PlayStation to the N64, and the N64 one just couldn't handle it in terms of texture resolution. So it's like downscaled to almost like Blur Vision.
Okay, moving us on to the Dreamcast.
The dear old Dreamcast.
See, I never
Windows operating system.
I was going to say it was Windows.
Oh, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I played on this far more than I played on my N64. Particularly Choo Choo Rocket. Really, the first proper party game I ever played. I remember just getting madly drunk and playing that for hours. And
I liked the idea of the memory cards on this.
Yeah, I had quite a few memory cards.
They had their own little controllers.
Yeah, I had quite a few.
I think the controller's the best controller as well that I've ever used. I still love it.
Great.
The memory cards are something that you don't really think about anymore, but you just having to remember to take these with you where you went.
30 quid a pop.
And some of them, like this one was the 8 megabyte PlayStation 2 one. They were expensive for 8 megs.
Wow. Crazy Taxi was my most played game, I think, on Dreamcast.
Mine was Sonic Adventure, and then found out Dreamcast they had no security, so you could just burn stuff to a CD. And Half-Life, the Dreamcast version, it never made it into production, but it was out there floating on the web. So that was quite interesting to sort of burn it and play. I think it's called Half-Life Gold. Don't know what happened with it. Don't know why it never came out for Dreamcast.
I can do a Matt for a second. Look what I've got here.
That's your Dreamcast games.
Yeah. Look, Choo Choo Rocket, awesome game. Crazy Taxi.
Have you got Airblade?
Carol's favourite game of all time, Trick Style, and then of course the two that I actually bought and never got a chance to play. Still waiting to play these two. It's ridiculous.
Oh,
Well, you're not missing out on anything.
Shenmue and all that.
I think Shenmue just came out in one of my Humble bundles, one of the monthly ones. It'll be obviously a remake, I guess. Windows. We're moving on to DOS, also PC gaming. These are two of my first flight sims.
Yeah, see, this is probably all Duke. I couldn't afford a PC really to play proper gaming on, so I was a console gamer for a long
Well,
time.
actually, I asked back in
Unless you include DOS gaming, which
the one on the left is DOS. Jet Fighter 2 was DOS only. In fact, Flight Sim was launched. Most games were launched from DOS, even though I was running Windows 3.1. I know it's 95 on the screen there. Most of the time, you had to kill Windows in order to have enough memory to play the games. So you launched most games from DOS anyway. But no, I asked for an Amstrad. Thanks, Mick, for correcting me there. I thought it was Atari. But yeah, my Amstrad GX4000 for my birthday in 1990. And my parents bought me a 386 SX instead, which was far more expensive, but began a 30-year journey through PCs.
You're going to be glad you didn't get your GX4000.
Well, yeah, with 15,000 sold, as I say, I think it was almost the worst selling console of all time.
I think there was 10 games came out.
Yeah, I see them on eBay every so often. I'm kind of tempted to have a go, but it's kind of a waste of money, I think. But no, these two, the Flight Sims.
I worked on a game for it, and it got finished but never released. So I think quite a few companies did as well. It just didn't sell anywhere near what they were expecting.
No, it's terrible. But that Flight Sim on the right there, that's actually version 5 of the Flight Sim. The one on the right, that's Microsoft Flight Sim. They were started in 87 development, but they didn't really kick off until version 5, which is that one on the right. That's the one I played a lot of. And then the one on the left, Jet Fighter 2. Played many hours of that one.
Well, those are not early 90 games anyway. You can tell by the fact they're not CGA.
93, I think it is, for the... I think it's 93 for Flight Sim. But no, we were switching there to EGA and VGA, weren't we, at that point, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then first driving games that I played back then. Need for Speed, the first one, 94, I think this is. Need for Speed.
See, I think this is the era, probably late 90s, early 90s, where the PC Master Race actually meant something. Like PC Master Race now, it just means, I can play it at a higher resolution. Yeah. But back then it was like, no, you can play games that you can't play anywhere else.
Sega Rally was arcade only, or arcade and PC, I think. Until later on. It did come to... I've got it on Xbox 360, weirdly, Sega Rally, and it's the same level, same maps, just up to graphics. But no, Need for Speed, I think that's really what started my love of driving games, which is pretty much all I play now. Not quite, but...
Micro Machines is great. Yeah, I think I had that for the Mega Drive.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think it was a Mega Drive. This is Micro Machines 2.
I had a Mega Drive as well. It's great.
And then we've put Windows 95 in the top left, but as I say, I ran Windows 3. I ran from Windows 1, I think. Then I skipped 2. Then there was 3. Then everyone was stuck at 3.11 because that was the first time they added all the networking stuff, wasn't it? Until 95.
Yeah, 3.1. I remember in 3.1. Yeah. That was
came on 10 floppy disks. Imagine that, an entire operating system on 10
And you tell the kids today that they don't believe.
Yeah. And then some platformers from the same time. So Prince of Persia, I know they say 89 in the top, but I checked and there were 90 releases. But
played the one in the top right.
Oh, Prince of Persia. That's on.
Yeah,
you can play that still in the Bradford Media Museum. They've got this and GoldenEye running in the little games museum bit.
Prince of Persia is really interesting from a development point of view because all of the character movements rotoscoped artwork.
So. Oh, the same thing with Flashback as well. That was too.
Yeah, Flashback's great. And then Dizzy, I swapped Dizzy with my sister. We went to Blackpool and I won a massive teddy, like the size of a human type teddy. And she had this on a 3.5-inch floppy disk, and she wanted the teddy and I wanted the game, so we swapped. And then, I played a lot of Dizzy. This is Fantasy World Dizzy, this one.
See, I was quite lucky because my uncle was in the sort of industry of computing and stuff, so I always got new computers and he used to give me loads of floppies with games on and stuff.
Oh, were you one of those kids that used to say in the playground, "Oh, my uncle works at such and such a place"?
My uncle started eBay.
Cool.
Wow.
Toot toot. But no, but it was just nice to have, and then that's I think where my love of computers came from.
Cool. And then I think I've got. Oh, and then there's the early first-person shooters.
Wolfenstein and Doom.
I played Wolfenstein 3D more than I played Doom. I think because I think I went from Wolfenstein quickly through Doom into Quake, if memory serves. I mean, it's a long time ago, but I seem to remember playing a lot of Wolfenstein. And then Doom was like, oh, this is really cool. And it was only like 2 or 3 years before Quake launched. And then it was mostly
I
Quake.
still don't understand how on earth these work. It's that whole binary space partition stuff just bends my
You
brain.
can still do BSPs in Unreal Engine 4.
Yeah, but it just doesn't make sense to me on a sort of logical level.
Yeah. Up until a few years ago, this is how we built all our Counter-Strike levels, wasn't it? Or at least the beginnings of. So it was first person, so we got flight sim driving first person. And then, of course, the most famous, I think, from the 90s PC gaming was Quake and Quake 2 and Half-Life.
There's a famous PC Gamer magazine from cover that says, "Can graphics get any better than this?"
I think there's plenty of those. Was it Bill Gates who said you never need more than 4 meg of RAM? Something like that.
But I wish I could find the PC cover because the image they chose wasn't great.
I never really liked Quake that much. Just the whole look of it was all a bit dark and a bit.
It was the
gritty kind of.
For me, it was the multiplayer.
I've got to admit, it did nothing for me either. The first-person shooter that really hooked me was Counter-Strike. The rest of them, I just could have taken.
I mean, I love Doom. I used to love playing the co-op on Doom. But yeah, Quake never really.
I think it was. I think possibly because I was playing more multiplayer back then. Before Ethernet, when it was all BNC networking, and before that, when it was all serial, machine to machine. But I played a lot more multiplayer Quake than anything else, and you can't really beat multiplayer against humans, can you? That's where the love of any game is drastically improved when you're playing against other actual people that you can scream at. I think it makes a big difference. I think that's why Quake for me, because I went to uni in '97. So I arrived at university, we set up a BNC networking in our flat in Storth Hall, and we were playing Quake 2, I think, at the time, and all the time. So I think that's why there's that heavy nostalgia element to it.
Storth Hall.
Yeah,
That's where I went.
I think it was only the second year it was around, after they rebuilt the mental place.
So I was 2010. I went to uni, so quite a ways after.
Yeah, I think
Is a mental place a bit like a mind palace?
Yes, that's the one.
But, see, I think the first-person shooter you were saying there about the multiplayer, I think that's why things like, for me, GoldenEye on the N64 was so good, is because you had that split-screen multiplayer. Yeah. And then Halo on the original Xbox, because you could actually do LAN parties with them it was a cheap way of doing LAN parties, whereas PC gaming was a very expensive hobby back then.
Oh, it was. I remember in '97 when we used to get our server towers. So I didn't have a small PC. Obviously, I had a big server tower and a 24-inch CRT. So you'd have to, if you wanted to LAN party, you would go to somebody. It would take you like an hour to get to their house, in terms of loading your kit. And then you'd have your server tower with your PC.
Then you spend about 2 hours sorting out a networking
at least
issues.
Minimum of 2 hours, usually overnight, and then the following day you'd start playing. I mean, do you remember things like, because we had, what was the old networking protocol before TCP/IP? Was it like IBX? One with an X in it. I can't remember, but you had to set, and you all had like 8-digit codes, and in Red Alert 2 you had to make sure you all had the right 8-digit code to man. Oh, it's painful. I mean, it was still Ethernet connection, but it wasn't TCP/IP. It was.
I remember when Diablo first came out, we decided we were going to play Diablo, and we were going to spend all night playing Diablo, and we got together at 6:30, and we finally got it working at 2:00 in the morning.
I've done that.
Next slide,
many.
I think.
Sorry, we wobbly on.
Well, there's 2 slides actually. Mick's Command and Conquer. I assume it's Mick's.
Yeah, Command and Conquer. Yeah, that was awesome. I love Command and Conquer. They're remaking it, aren't they?
They're doing a high def version or whatever.
Yeah. I read that they've still got the old footage and they're just upscaling the footage as well. I'm looking forward to that.
But yeah, I think this was one of the first games as well that I used to play regularly online. Was Command and Conquer, but it wasn't like internet. It was like you had to physically dial up someone else's, modem kind of thing and connect like that.
Yeah, the old Westwood servers. Couldn't you dial into the Westwood servers directly, and then you didn't matchmake, but there was ways to find people through that, if memory serves. But you could do IPX/SPX. That was it.
Sure.
Before TCP/IP, wasn't it? IPX/SPX.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I think Command and Conquer supported IPX/SPX direct connection as well. But yeah, I played far too much Command and Conquer, and mostly
Yeah,
Red Alert 2, to be honest.
just the whole series of it. So yeah, Red Alert, that kind of stuff as well.
If you move to the next slide
yeah,
eventually,
sorry.
And then there was Mech
is-
Warrior up in the
Yeah,
top
yeah,
corner as well, Mech Warrior 2.
Yeah, that's still.
Yeah, it's just I didn't get into the Command and Conquer series, the one that, as Duke will testify, has always obsessed me, and to this day I will still quite happily play.
Me too.
Is Total
Me too.
Annihilation.
Awesome game.
It's a stunning game, and it's obviously it's been sort of superseded by Planetary Annihilation and what's the
Supreme
one
Commander,
called?
which
Supreme
wasn't
Commander.
particularly great.
Yeah. No, but I think Planetary Annihilation is interesting. I don't know. I'd love to see a remake of this, just a true faithful remake with all the units exactly as they are, because it's just like chess. It doesn't age.
And then there's
wonderful.
Warcraft as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
good games, but I mean, maybe it's personal preference, but I think Total Annihilation is just the best RTS of all
And
time.
StarCraft.
Is that Diablo in the bottom right corner?
Well, I was going to talk about the networking problems, and that was there because obviously Diablo's. I still play Diablo 3 to this day. It's again fantastic series of games.
I'm trying to think of what game it was, but there used to be a very similar to Diablo in isometric top down, but it was an MMO, and it was. There used to be a channel on TV that just used to stream for a couple of hours a day. An MMO, and I can't remember what it was called, but in reality, that was like the first version of Twitch.
Yeah.
I used to come home and watch people play MMO games on TV.
Was it on Sky?
It was
on a Sky channel.
Yeah, it was in the early days of Sky when if you had a Sky box, you got a load of free channels with it, and one of the free channels was streaming of this MMO.
I think I remember seeing something like that.
But I just mentioned that what we got in the bottom left-hand corner is Baldur's Gate, the original Baldur's Gate. There's several things that I just want to mention about that. First of all, I'd grown up playing D&D and AD&D, and this is kind of AD&D on a computer. It was mind-blowing at the time. So we used to get together pretty much, I think, for about 4 months every Friday night, all night, playing through this and Icewind Dale and whatever the other one. I can't remember what the other one's called now, but just brilliant games. This is what got BioWare started, really, and they've been making cracking RPGs ever since.
Wow.
We've just gone up.
Also, isn't it Baldur's Gate?
Shut up.
No, it was a genuine question. I don't know if I've been pronouncing it wrong.
I don't know. I've only ever read it.
We had this a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, when I said it was ID software and somebody said it was id.
It's definitely is.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I think this is Baldur's Gate. I'm pretty
sure it's
confident.
Baldur's.
I've always called it Baldur's.
I always said Baldur's.
I might be wrong. I've never actually heard it out loud by anyone.
But
And then I see you've got Monkey Island as well at the top there.
Yeah, I just love the cartoon graphics in it. I mean, I know the earlier Monkey Islands were better reviewed than Monkey Island 3, but I absolutely adored the artwork in this.
Well, the early 90s and that was like a big thing with the point and click adventures, and so you had like Dig and just loads of different.
Grim Fandango, yeah.
I know we've just passed an hour, so we better. How many slides have we got?
Oh, we've only got one slide left,
right,
haven't we? Or is it two? Maybe 2 slides.
Well,
left.
we've got the lost consoles.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, we've got. Yeah.
Well, this slide here is EverQuest. Came out in 1999 and dominated my life for the next 5 years.
Never played it.
So
EverQuest was before World of Warcraft, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think EverQuest was the first true 3D MMO, and it exploded onto the scene in 1999, kind of thing. And that, like I say, I played it then pretty much solidly. It was my only game that I played for like 5 years.
That's insane.
Wow. There's so many games we've missed out that I'm just thinking of right now. That games that took up all my time.
Absolutely. You can only do so
true.
much in an. We've gone well over the hour already, so we need to last together. Consoles that time for.
I had to get my Amstrad GX 4000 in there. The reason I got
well, I stuck the Jaguar in the end because I thought, well, technically it sold nothing. Why not?
Oh, I think the Sega Saturn is amazing because I remember my cousin gloating that he got a Sega Saturn and I didn't, and then basically a year later they went, "Oh yeah, we're not making any games for it."
I'd made mine.
It sold 4 times more than the Jag though.
Wow.
4 times.
Yeah, but it was 4 times as many people that were disappointed that nothing came out on it.
My best mate went with the Sega Saturn at the time.
This is true.
Wonder if he still got it.
I think like the most modern version, like these type of consoles that don't do well, the modern one is obviously like the Wii U. I had a Wii U and then went, oh, there's no games.
And of course, we have the console that killed VR for about a decade. Well, actually, much longer than that. Thinking about it, probably about nearly 2 decades.
The Virtual Boy.
Yeah, but you're saying VR. It wasn't VR.
No.
I know, but people thought it was at the time.
It was just like red glowy thing, wasn't it?
Well, it was
Graphics. It was basically a Game Boy graphics.
It was stereoscopic 3D though, wasn't it? That's what it was.
Yeah, but it didn't work very well.
No, it was.
But the actual games themselves were all pretty much 2D games, and they looked like a red glowy version of Game Boy games, original Game Boy games.
Oh, wow. Well, I think less said about it, the better. Shall we move on?
And then I think the best game ever made, and probably the best console ever made, is the next slide. I don't think anyone can argue with this.
Certainly
Snake.
sold the most. Did you? Was that a prop in your hand there, Matt?
I couldn't find mine. I have it
Couldn't find
somewhere.
Nokia.
I have it in a drawer somewhere.
Mine's in a
I think
loft.
I
I didn't
had
get a
that
chance to get it
Nokia
out.
because is that a 1910?
That was the first Nokia that had the Snake.
That's
on
the
it,
6600.
That's
that
not
one.
a 6. That's a 19, isn't it?
That's the first phone I had.
I think it
I
was
had one of those in 1997.
I think the most popular one was the 3210 or the 3310. Yeah, that was the one that I had Snake on. But is that Snake 2?
That's Snake 2.
This is Snake 2.
Snake 1.
Yeah.
Oh, I did that. That's my fault. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Snake 2 had the better graphics, whereas Snake 1 was just literally a block.
Yeah.
Getting
And
a
just
block.
so for the young kids out there watching and that, that's not a touch screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a phone.
Yeah, I remember texting. All you could do was text and ring. That was about it. Although
All you wanted to do on this game was get a perfect game. And just try and fill that screen. And it was impossible.
I think there were only...
You remember the...
Obviously,
Sorry, go on.
when I started university in 97, of the 100 people in a class, there were only about 8 or 10 of us with mobile phones. Imagine that these days. I mean, it's I think everyone has a phone, pretty much.
It was. Wow, when did I get my first mobile phone? It was secondary school. It was probably when I was about 14,
14? Wow.
15, something like that. When I first got my first phone.
So I'm going to show my age again and just say the first mobile phone I ever saw was hardly even bloody mobile. One of our friends turned up to the pub with it, and it was the size of a suitcase.
I remember those.
And we just laughed at him. It was like, why on earth did he need that? He was a social worker, so he absolutely didn't need to keep carrying that around with him.
Was that?
It's like, what if someone needs to ring me? I've got my briefcase.
Was that the old days? Do you remember the very early ones where when you picked up the phone, it was an operator. You didn't dial a number. You spoke to an operator and you asked the number you wanted to call, and they typed it.
He didn't let us use it. It probably cost him a tenner a phone call. There's absolutely no way.
There were only like 10 lines or something in the UK, and you'd have to pick it up. And
I don't think I saw another mobile phone for another 5 years after that. This is silly.
Is that the last slide?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
that is the
On a high.
the 90s gaming
It's
for
probably
us.
the biggest game of the 90s. More people probably played this than anything else.
Probably.
I can't back that up without numbers, but there we go.
Yeah.
Well, pretty much every phone was out.
Yeah, exactly.
Back then was either a
Everybody-
Nokia or a Philips.
Or a Motorola, actually. I had a lot of
I had a few
Motorola phones. in
Well,
the
Motorola were a bit later. Weren't they sort of like?
Yeah, but I started in the 90s. They were my go-to phone. I like the StarTAC little flip phone.
Do you remember when the SIM cards were the size of a credit card? For those Motorolas, the whole credit card slid in the back. So the SIM card was literally the size.
Oh yeah, I
It was a
remember
credit
those.
card
Yeah.
size SIM card,
Totally
wasn't
forgotten
it?
about that.
And then they got
Yeah,
the
that
small
was-
ones, and then obviously now we're into pretty soon eSIM, I guess, which is nothing.
Yeah.
Cool. So does anybody want to add anything else before we wrap
No,
up?
that was fun. It was fun going down memory lane again.
Yeah.
Next week, of course,
2000s.
people will be catching up
Yeah.
with us. Yeah, loads of people will have watched this and going, "Oh yeah, I vaguely remember that." And I think next time there'll be a lot of. Hopefully, we'll get more viewers as well. But yeah, a lot of things that are closer to present day.
Yeah, I think this is for me the era that defined me wanting to do something with games at that point. Not sure what at the time, but I was like, this is too good for me not to do something with. And then
Yeah, well, this is when I got into working in games, but the first stuff that I worked on was released in 2000, so it'll appear in the next week's.
Cool. Excellent. Mick and Ash, you want to say anything before we sign out?
No, it's just been a nice trip down memory lane.
Indeed.
Remembering why you escape from life playing these crappy little games.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining us. Yep, as Daryl says, we'll see you next week for the 2000s. The noughties, is that what we're calling it? And we'll roll the outro.
Bye.